Hello, this is Jacqueline from Jack Knits, and we are going to today learn how to do diagonal stripe knitting. So we're actually going to be knitting at an angle, knitting our project from one corner to the other, but it's going to create this really fun diagonal stripes knitting. It's a really fun design to do, so let's take a look. Diagonal stripes can be a really fun design to incorporate into your next project. Here I did a fun little headband with these diagonal stripes. Just creates just a really unique look to any project. So let's take a look at how we're going to do this. As I mentioned, we are going to be actually knitting our project from corner to corner at an angle. And this is how it's going to be done. I drew out a little diagram here because I wanted you to kind of get a feel for how each section is knitted. This diagonal pattern, when you knit a rectangle like this or a square, it's going to be actually done in 3 sections. The first section here, highlighted in pink, we're going to start here at this corner, and then we are going to do an increase stitch at the beginning of each right side row and the beginning of each wrong side row. So the beginning of each row, we're going to do an increase, and that's going to create our fabric to start increasing out to form a little triangle, just like it did here. Okay? And then we're going to work on that section 1, increasing at the beginning of each row until our project is as wide as we want it to on this side of the fabric. So as soon as I get to a point where I've knitted as wide as I wanted for this, if I was going to be knitting a headband, let's say it's just a few inches or 3 inches, then you're going to switch to section 2. And section 2 is just a little bit different in that we're going to continue to increase on the right side of each row. So we're going to continue this angle going up, but we want our wrong side to take a turn and be parallel with this side. So then we're going to be starting to decrease at the start of every wrong side row. So this middle section, or this section here, we are going to be increasing at the start of the wrong side or right side row and decreasing at the start of the wrong side row. So increase and decrease, and that's going to give us a little parallel section in this middle section 2. Then when our project is as long as we want it on this side, so as we get to a point where we want it to be this length, then we're going to start section 3, and section 3 is going to be a decrease on the start of each row, the start of a wrong side row, the start of the right side row, the start of the wrong side row, and we're going to decrease all the way on each side till the end, and then we're going to end at this corner. Okay, so 3 sections, and the difference is what we do at the beginning of each row. So let's put that into practice and let's start a little project of our own here. Okay, so let's do these 2 colors. We are, of course, to really showcase diagonal stripes or diagonal knitting, you're going to want to do some colored stripes, and that's just going to really make it stand out. So we're going to pick these 2 colors. I'm choosing a white and then a variegated blue, and we are going to start with casting on. Now I am just using some DPNs here, a number 6 just for my swatch. This is a worsted weight yarn, but you know, this can be done with any weight yarn, any size needle, and this is working flat back and forth on straight needles. So let's cast on. We're going to cast on just 3 stitches to start with. So 1, 2, and 3 stitches on my needle. And then the very first row is a right side row, and as we mentioned, the beginning of a right side row, we are going to increase. Now I'm always going to do my increase and decrease on the second stitch of each row, and that provides me an opportunity to, on that first stitch, do a little salvaged edge. So we're going to be doing a little bit of a salvaged edge to produce a more neat edge on the sides of our knitting. On the first stitch. So the first stitch will be a salvage stitch. The second stitch will be our increase or decrease depending on where we are in the section. So to do our salvaged edge, we are going to knit the first stitch of every row. So let's knit this first stitch. And now our second stitch needs to be an increase stitch because we're going to be increasing at the start of every row for this section 1. So the increases stitch that we're going to do is going to be a knit in the front and the back. We're going to do that same increase throughout the entire project. So knit in the front and the back of the stitch for our increase. And then the last stitch of the round is going to be, or the row is going to be our selvage stitch, and that's going to be a slip stitch purlwise with the yarn in front. So we can slip that purlwise with the yarn in front. Okay, so now we've got 4 stitches on our needle. We've increased it by 1. I'm going to turn our work. Now we're on the wrong side. We're still using the first color, our white. We're going to do each color a total of 2 rows, there and back, a right side row and a wrong side row, and then we'll switch colors. So here's our first stitch. Selvage stitch is going to be a knit stitch. And then our next stitch is still going to be an increase stitch because we're increasing at the start of every row for section 1. So our increase stitch is going to be our knit in the front and the back. Then we'll knit to the end, except that last stitch we're going to slip it purlwise with the yarn in front. All right, so now we created our first little corner here with our first color. Now we're always going to switch colors on the start of our right side row. So now we're going to switch to this blue. And however you like to change colors, I like to take my tail, wrap it around my pinky to give it a little stability, and then just begin to knit with my new color. So we're still going to knit our first stitch with our new color, increase our second stitch, knit in the front and the back, knit to the end, but slip it purlwise with the yarn in front. Okay, so now turn our work. We're still working on color 2. We're only going to switch colors when we're on the side with our color tails. So on the way back, same thing, knitting the first stitch and then increase on the second stitch, a knit in the front and the back, and knit to the end. And slip this purlwise with the yarn in front. Now that stitch is kind of loose because there's nothing really anchoring that down because that was our first stitch, but just give it a little tug every once in a while to secure that. All right, now we're turning our work again. Now it's time to change back to our white. So let's grab our white working yarn. No need to cut off the blue. We're just going to be carrying the other color up the sides of the knitting, kind of tucking it behind that first stitch. So let's now, again, with our next color, knit that first stitch, do an increase on the second stitch, and knit to the end. Slip that last stitch purlwise with the yarn in front. Again, just give those extra loose stitches on the end a little tug every once in a while. Let's turn over to the wrong side, knit, knit in the front and the back, knit to the end, and slip it with the yarn in front purlwise. And now switch to our blue color. All right, so now we've got our blue color and we're going to do the same thing. Knit the first stitch, increase, and knit to the end. Okay, so that is section 1. Increasing at the start of every single row, and that is going to start producing a kind of a triangle shape knit. It's kind of hard to see when it's so few rows, so I'm going to knit a few more, and you can kind of see it start to develop into this little triangle. So let me knit continuing in section 1, in our section 1 of this, until my side of my knitting is as wide as I feel is necessary, and then we will switch to section 2. So now that I've completed my section 1, you can see that I have created a little triangle here because we've been increasing at the start of each row. And so you can kind of see that it matches here. But you can see that it's a nice little right-hand corner for the start of our knitting. So now that this side of my fabric is as wide as I want it, of course for this little swatch it's just a small little piece, but if it was a scarf or even a blanket or a headband, of course you would be doing this section 1 longer until this was the width that you wanted your project to be. And now we're going to switch to section 2. And section 2 now is going to switch the direction of this side of our fabric to start heading in the other direction. So now we're going to be increasing at the start of our right side rows, but we're going to be decreasing at the start of our wrong side rows. And that's going to comprise section 2, this little parallel section that we're going to do. So let's start section 2 with our next color, and I just completed a white couple rows, so now we're going to be working with our blue again. So we're still increasing at the start of our right side row, the side of the fabric where we're switching colors, and we're still doing our selvage stitch of our knit for the first stitch. We're still doing our increase, so we're going to do our knit in the front and the back to begin our right side row. And as always, we're just going to knit to the end and do our little selvage stitch at the end as well. Going to end with our selvage stitch of slipping purlwise with the yarn in front. That does not change. We're still going to do that selvage stitch all the time throughout our project. And now we are going to be switching to a decrease at the start of our wrong side rows only. So on the side where we're going back with our same color, we're going to again start with our plain knit stitch for our selvaged edge. And now we're going to do a decrease. The decrease that we're going to do throughout this project is a knit 2 together. So for our next stitch, we're going to decrease by knitting these next 2 stitches together for a decrease, and we'll knit to the end of this row. Slipping with the yarn in front, purlwise. All right, now we're going to switch colors again, switching to our white. And let's do another row of this section 2 where we are increasing at the start of our right side row, knitting in the front and the back, knitting to the end. All right, beginning of our wrong side row. Now we're doing the decreases still. So in section 2, we're decreasing. So we'll knit the first stitch and then do our knit 2 together. For that decrease. Okay, and we'll just continue in that fashion for the entire section 2. Increase at the beginning of your right side row, decreasing at the start of your wrong side row. And we're going to do that until your piece measures as long as you want it. So kind of keep track of how long you want your piece to be, whether it's a blanket, a scarf. You could be hanging out in this section 2 for a very long time, but this is kind of that parallel section that we're doing right here in the middle. So let me again knit for several more rows in section 2, and then we will start our section 3. So how are we coming? It looks like we are now done with section 2. You can see that by doing the decreases at the start of each wrong side row, we have turned a corner here, and we have been knitting now in parallel edges for the entire section 2. where we increased at the start of the right side row and decreased at the start of the wrong side row. So as soon as this side of your project is as long as your pattern indicates, or as long as you desire, you can now switch to section 3. And section 3 is going to be a decreasing on each side until it ends in this corner. So we are going to decrease at the start of our right side row and decrease at the start of each wrong side row. And we're going to do that until we have 3 stitches at the end, and that will be our last corner. So let's switch to now section 3. I've just completed a blue couple rows, so now it's time for the white rows. And we'll continue with our salvage stitches. So we're going to do a decrease at the start of our right side row, knit 2 together. We'll knit to the end. Continuing with our slip stitch at the end of the row. Let's turn our work. This is the beginning of the wrong side row, and in section 3 we are going to also decrease at the start of each wrong side row. So we'll do a knit 2 together on our second stitch as well for a decrease, and knit to the end. All right, let's switch to our blue, and we're going to continue in this fashion of decreasing at the start of each row. Knit 2 together for our decrease. So we are going to do that, and it's going to create now a corner on this side of our fabric as well, and we're going to start to now work until we get to a point. So we're going to continue this section 3, decreasing at the start of each row until we have 3 stitches left, and then we'll bind off. So let me work ahead to that point. Now I've completed section 3 where I decreased at the start of each row, and I have come to a point where I've got 3 stitches left. So now I'm at that end corner. You can see clearly that it turned the corner, and now I've got a nice little rectangle. So let's quick bind off here. You can bind off with your next color if you wish. Just do a very simple bind off, or we'll knit 1, knit the next stitch, and pass that first stitch over that second stitch, and do that same for the very last one. Just a quick little bind off. All right, so here is our finished project. You can see that it's a little bit wonky in shape, so I would suggest that you block it and really pin the corners down to create your nice even triangle. That's what I did with this swatch to make it lay nice and flat with nice corners. So that is highly recommended at the end of this project to kind of put it into a nice shape for you. Now, if you are looking at your finished project and you notice that your edges are not quite straight, you know, that it kind of weaves in and out, that probably means that you forgot to do an increase or a decrease at the start of one of your rows. So it's a good idea to kind of keep doing a little self-check as you're knitting along to make sure that your edges are straight. If you notice that it's kind of going in or out, you may be forgetting those increase and decrease stitches. So just keep that in mind. So I hope you give this project a try. Just try it with something small first, a headband, or you can try something really outrageous like a huge blanket. It will make a beautiful project no matter what you decide, and it's obviously very simple to do, as you've seen here. So don't forget to give me a thumbs up if you like this video, and subscribe so you can get notifications on future videos all about knitting tips and techniques, creative stitches, and fun patterns. Thanks for watching, everybody. Happy knitting.